actions, I'll ask for unanimous consent, so either a simple yes, no motion required, or simply the absence of a no and a respectful pause, and we'll move along. With that said, since we have new members, Bob, will you perform a roll call, please, and introduce our new members?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Gates.
Here.
Board Member Durham.
Here.
Chair Janes.
Here.
Board Member England.
Here.
And Board Member Winterberg.
Here.
Thank you, Bob, and welcome to our new and returning member. I will ask for unanimous consent to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
No objection. We'll proceed to approval of minutes. On this one, we will limit the voting to the two members who were present during that hearing, Board Member Wendenberg and myself. Rob, W., do you have any corrections?
I do not.
I do. Under item 8.3, the Hamel residence, I did not vote in favor of that, so I will move to approve the minutes with that correction noted.
Thank you.
We will now move to public comment. Anyone here tonight who'd like to discuss something not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will skip over the consent agenda, of which there are no items, and proceed directly to a public hearing for 1953 Yountville Crossroad. Bob, if you'll present the staff report. Thank you.
This is a project site located on Yountville Cross between Mesa and Talent Lane, actually on the corner of Talent Lane. It's a 11,445 square foot lot with an existing single-family residence with detached garage, 1,327 square feet on the house and 378 square feet on the garage. The existing house is a lap siding, rock and asphalt shingle roof, and the proposal is to add a total of 842 square feet in 4 locations on the existing house. Those locations are, let's see, this is north pointing this way. So on the north side, it's a bay window projection here totaling about 71 square feet. And then on the east side would be a 324 square foot addition. On the south side, this wall gets extruded out for 74 square feet. And then this on the west side for 338 square feet. Those represent, as you can see in your site plan, this addition is a bay window, as I noted. This addition over here is 2 bathrooms and a dressing room on this, over here, on this side, and a walk-in closet. This is just an expansion of the dining room and kitchen area off the back. And then over on the west side is a morning room and an office guest room. At the front, there'll also be a new bank of French doors installed. There's also a proposed, these are the elevations. The existing siding is going to be amended to a stucco finish with a standing seam metal roof. And on the roof, there's a cupola feature midway. The colors of the structure and trim colors are on display here with this is a stucco trim color and a roof, the metal roof sample here. bottom up here, these are the French doors and the bay window extension, mullions, divided lights, same with the French door. And then there's a fence, new fence proposed that is a combination of wood within a metal frame, 6 foot in height. The table on page 2 breaks down the setbacks and FAR for this project. All are within the maximum allowed. There's a landscape plan that is, the color version is up on the wall here. You have a black and white in your packet. They're retaining all existing trees on the parcel. There's a large tree in the front at the northwest corner, 2 smaller on the side to the east of the residence. I think I have a graphic of this. Not in color, though. And then a cypress tree in the rear yard. New landscaping in the front includes this lawn area, a mature olive tree, several junipers, Japanese maple, rose bushes, boxwood lavender, and grasses. Those are detailed more and labeled in the landscape plan that was included in your packet. They're going to use reclaimed concrete for pathways and moss-covered accent rocks and black bark for mulch. And I mentioned the 6 foot. The findings are laid out in the staff report. Staff is recommending approval of this after discussion. And there is a attachment A with conditions of approval. One feature of this landscape area, we have been informed, is less than 5,000 square feet, which is the threshold for the new state-mandated water efficiency landscape ordinance. And you'll hear that term come up. It's called WELO. And it requires a more extensive calculation of the maximum allowed water consumption for each site for commercial and residential should they exceed an amount of improvements in square footage. This one apparently does not, but we've included a condition number 3 that if it is determined later that they exceed the 5,000 square foot maximum, they would need to comply with the WELO requirements. And it's a fairly detailed or more detailed breakdown of dividing plant materials into zones and then not mixing zones that are unalike. Soils reports are required. The types of plant materials have to be assessed. Each have a separate evapotranspiration rate, and they're assessed against the amount that is being planted. And the ultimate aim is to not, through all of this, exceed the water allowance for that parcel. So they would have to do adjusting to bring it down within that limit. You can have lawn, but it's a high water consumer, so that you're using up a lot of your allowance in that way. And then there's a lot of other little peculiarities about that requirement where you can't have sprinkler heads closer than 2 feet from a impermeable surface like a driveway or sidewalk, which the typical is the driveway meets the sidewalk and the sprinkler head's right at the corner. It has to be 2 feet in, and the idea is to not be water in the sidewalks and driveways, that it's a better chance of going on the plant material. So that's the staff report, and if there's any questions, I don't know if here are some other details on the landscape plan showing the pathway material. And this is what I pointed out up here, the windows and doors and the roof material, the fence. That's it. Any questions I could answer? And I'll remind you, this is a continued item from the July 13th meeting when the CDRB requested more information from the applicant.
So before we hear from the applicant, any questions of staff?
So have they indicated that there's
they've removed the fence from the plan that was on Talent Lane. And they're not touching the garage, or should I ask the applicant about that?
I believe the improvements are limited to the residents.
Okay.
I think that they're stuck on.
Yeah, they're going to
Garage.
finish it off to match
Right.
in material. Yeah, there's not a detail of that in the plans.
That's all I have.
Is this substantially more than you saw?
Yes.
Yes.
If there are no other questions of staff, I'm sure we'd love to hear from the applicant.
Hi, my name is Alan Sawyer. I'm the general and the developer on the project.
Hi, Alan.
Hello. It's a straightforward addition remodel. We're just planning to blend into the community and using environmentally friendly landscaping techniques. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
What's the current use of the garage? I went by there the other day and saw a residential-type screen door and entryway there. Is it
Right.
being used as a garage or some other purpose?
It's strictly a garage, but it has kind of an awkward door in the front that gives the appearance like it could be something else. So it's never been used as any kind of living space. There's no remodel inside other than a straight slab inside and exposed beams in the garage with no improvements to it. And we're not
No
planning to make
foreseen
any
improvements to the
No.
interior of the garage?
Correct. Well, it's going to be the exterior. We're going to clean it up.
I mean, the inside.
Yeah, the inside, no. We plan to keep it as a garage.
Is there running water in the garage?
No, there's not.
I had a question about the landscaping plan, and you identified recycled concrete.
Correct.
Where's that coming from?
From the property itself.
It
We
is.
we broke up probably about 800 square feet of pathways that were just, to improve drainage and everything, and with the overall look and what we're going with the project, we broke up the concrete, going to create pathways that allow it to absorb rainwater and not allow any water to run off the properties, or at least minimize it as much as possible.
So then you're planting the moss between the
Correct.
the pavers?
Right.
So I'll ask you, just because last time there was a little confusion, that there was going to be, there was a thought about doing a bar,
Yes.
of wine bar out the back of the garage, and that's been nixed.
That was our naughty designer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an idea they had that was never accepted.
It's
by
a
us,
great,
but
I
it was-
didn't have any problem with the idea, it was just that it wasn't in any of the plans. Also on the original plan, there was a side fence on Torrent, or
Yes,
Front
that was
lane.
actually,
Talent Lane.
yeah, I mean, with the setbacks and the restriction of the height, we're not going there at all.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Any further questions of the applicant? None? Thanks very much. The
Thank you.
application is considerably more robust.
I appreciate
I'm
it.
sure we
Thank you.
appreciate it. So we can now discuss and entertain a motion.
Thank you.
My brief discussion, yeah, much better, and much cleaner than last time. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Sorry we had to make you guys go through that hoop, but it's a lot cleaner this way. And as I said before, I like all the design characteristics, the siding and stuff like that. I do want to encourage always, my big thing is this water. I think 5,000 square feet is way too big to kick in well, and I know well is a state thing, but I also see on the plans a fountain back there, and that's going to be using water, and so I just always want to encourage our designs to be as water efficient as possible.
I didn't ask the question, I should have. I noticed that the landscape is all torn up, and I guess that's your concrete riprap.
Correct, yeah. And there's a lot of dead foliage on the property that wasn't being irrigated. So, and there was a period of time where it was without water, so there was a lot of dead.
I see.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any remodeling done to the house or any kind of demolition?
There was some
occurred?
demolition that was done, but that was with staff approval.
Oh, okay. Good.
And, yeah, we haven't proceeded anywhere we weren't allowed to.
Good. Okay.
We wanted to, but we didn't.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like your constraint.
Okay.
No, actually, I think it's a nice remodel. I think it'll fit in nicely with that site and that house, so I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
Is there a motion?
I will motion to approve the plan with the conditions suggested by staff.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're on your way. We will proceed to item 8.2, Green Addition at 1951 Mount Avenue. Okay. If you will, please announce you're recusing yourself due to the proximity of the residence.
All right, I need to recuse myself due to the proximity of the residents.
Okay. This is a, excuse me, wait for this to come up. Computer trouble. There we go. This is a project, single-family dwelling, detached garage, again, off of Mount, which is up here, and this is down a lot down a long driveway at the rear, backing onto Hopper Creek. The existing residence is roughly here. The garage has a second unit that was part of an earlier approval that was developed, and actually at that time the house had a more ambitious remodel approved along with the second unit. At this point, they went ahead and constructed the second unit and have redesigned the remodel on the house to what is before you tonight. The applicant, it's a 385 square foot, one-story addition on the southwest side of the existing residence. They're going to remove an existing shower room and covered porch that are located about in this area, and then extend this area for a total of 385 square feet. The addition's about 19 feet by 20, roughly. This is the application that was missing, at least in my packet, the second and third page that has this table on it, and I placed one of those at your spot there. So the table breaks down the what's allowed and proposed per the development standards for that zone district. And they're meeting all of the standards here. FAR will remain under the 0.25 at 18%. And then the design criteria, there's a listing here going through each point and explaining why staff, actually these are suggested findings by staff of why each one is met. On the elevations, the batten board and shingles will match the existing house, as well as the roof or excuse me, the roof pitch and the window types. They're adding 2 new windows on the east elevation, 2 new windows and a door on the south, and then 2 new windows. That's a repeat. So, let's see. This is the new portion here for the covered porch at the front. The roof drops down, same pitch, and gable end, same as the other side, and comes over for that new addition portion. There is a large porch that will be added on. They're removing a 250 square foot uncovered deck, the southeast elevation, and then constructing a new 488 square foot uncovered deck in the same location. That's shown. Whoops. Go back over here. This is the view of the side end. I don't know how clear that is to you. It's from Mount Street down the driveway, and then from the adjacent parcel that's vacant on the east side. So that is, these photos were included in color in your packet. That's about it, if you have any questions for me.
Questions of staff?
The removal of the windows, where are the new windows going to be going? Is there an egress issue in case of fire or anything like that?
Well, bedrooms are required to have a ceiling height and for egress. And there's also, there's one door out of it directly leading outside.
Okay.
So,
On another part of the building not shown on this photo?
well, on the floor plan, on page 2 of the plans, you can see in plan view a bank of windows. There's actually 2 banks of windows and the door. The door actually leads into this laundry area and then outside. So there's quite a few windows and the hallway that leads outside.
On the second floor?
On the first floor.
Yeah, but they're taking 2 windows out of the top floor, right? Or am I missing something? Aren't
Oh,
those 2 windows going to be removed?
The architect did put that in there. I realized that when I looked at it today. They probably won't be removed, or windows will be added
We'll,
in there.
Yeah.
we'll need to bring the
We'll defer to
applicant up
the
to the
applicant.
microphone
I'm sorry.
where we can hear him when we're ready to ask him questions. So,
I just thought maybe about it.
no, I understand.
And I might have I might end up having to go to the applicant as well. There's a lot of notations on these plans. Remove this, remove these stairs, remove this entryway. Are we using an old remodel plan design here, or what are those notations about? Because I don't see anything in the report, and I just want to make sure that we're all clear.
On the page 2,
Like my skylight addition existing upper level plan, it says remove stairway. On number 2, it says remove angled entry brace.
Yeah, that's the old plan. Sorry.
Okay.
I did put 2 sets of new plans at your place. I forgot to mention that. Be up in the corner there. And I did not mention the skylight that's going to go along the ridge line of the taller element. That's a new skylight.
But just to be clear, the second-story work is only to remove those windows and to add the skylight? Nothing else is going to be done? Is that right?
The floor, yeah, there's no addition being put on the second story.
Right. Well, I'm asking because of Rob's question, and that is, it does say remove existing stair, but I didn't see that in our packet as being part of it.
And I'm assuming that's from the previous plan
that
where there was a second
From
story
the previous
addition.
plan, you're still using the existing stairway.
I think he just used the second story plan to show the second story. The only thing that's changing up there, which I figure out now, are the two windows and the skylight. And I can address if you guys want to talk.
And we will, shortly. Any further questions of staff before we hear from the applicant and any member of the public? I do have one question to staff. The creek setback ordinance has two different metrics, from center line and from bank. It appears to be more than sufficient for the from bank measurement, but it's not detailed, and it's not an either or. It has to comply with both. I'll also mention while you're looking at that this will be coming up again, I know, tangentially later. It would be a good idea to clarify the ordinance, which in point of fact says 10 feet from creek bank, and does not say whether that's top of bank, as we've done as a matter of practice, from toe of bank, or from reverse toe of bank. In any end, can you, Bob, assure us that, in fact, it does comply with the 10-foot from bank measurement as well as the center line, which is shown?
Well, the center line, yeah, center line shown, and its dimension to, well, that line. And then top of bank is what we would be measuring the 10 feet from. That's labeled top of bank here. The structure is, it's more than 10 feet away from that top of bank.
I would recommend that that distance be detailed on the construction drawings for clarity. With that, Adam, I know we have some questions for you. Thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Sure. Adam Green, 1951 Mount Avenue, just trying to add a single-story bedroom so that we can stay here in Yountville instead of having to sell our house and move. We have two children. Sarah's here with me tonight, and we're just trying to expand our small footprint. We did have a much larger approved remodel that was approved 5 years ago, I believe, Bob, or within the last 5 years. However, my ZDRB permit had, or approval had expired, so we had to come back through the process, and we're just adding 385 square feet now. The upper windows was, I noticed it today as well. I don't plan on removing any upper windows, or at least moving them so that they fit in with the roof line for this new project. It's pretty much going to look exactly the same, except it's going to be 19 feet longer. So if you look at it looking east, it's going to look exactly the same with the same porch. It's just going to have a structure there instead of the little pimple, which is now a shower. So it's going to be a Jack and Jill bathroom, so the two kids will have a bathroom in the middle, and then adding the one bedroom. Adding the one bedroom gives us a little more room to add a pantry and sort of expand the kitchen as well. Interior, not exterior. So it's just going to be, and I when I was reading the staff report, I thought it was very, very well detailed, and I didn't notice that, we used the old second story plan to detail some of the things that are the skylight now. We're only asking for the approval of those. We may not actually do them. However, we are asking for the approval all at the same time. Same with the deck. We may not do the whole deck at this time. We're trying to keep this to a minimum cost, just to give us enough room so that we can expand. As I mentioned, Sarah getting older and Benjamin at 4, they are not really able to share a room anymore. So, and like I said, Sandra and Bob, I think, did a great job explaining it, and everything in the project, according to the planning department, does meet within the requirements of the code. So hopefully you can look at that and say, we approve. But thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. I'm not the architect on the project. He is not here today. I will try to answer them as best as possible.
Rob W., was your question answered?
Yeah, I believe so.
if you look at, I mean, I can show the old plan, which doesn't really matter, but the old plan did have a huge, extensive, footings, moving, new foundation, second-story element, adding a whole bedroom, bathroom upstairs over the living room, moving the staircase, and literally that was only going to give us like 600 more square feet, but it was going to cost me more than it cost to build the whole house. So we decided to scale the whole thing down. We did build the garage, which was approved in the last round of approvals, and now we're just going back to do a one-story element.
Any further questions for the applicant?
No, I can see from another photograph here that there are other windows up there, so I didn't know that there are other windows on the second floor, but looks like you got a dormer with other exits up there, so,
Oh, sure, there are other windows on the second floor.
okay.
Right.
That was my only concern.
Yeah.
Mr. Anglin?
It looks like you're remodeling the existing bathroom. Wait, is that right? On the first floor that's going to be between the two children's rooms?
Right.
Okay.
We're actually just taking out the shower, adding a tub shower, and just moving the fixtures around, but not adding any new fixtures.
And the water heater's moving someplace?
The water heater, we plan on putting in a tankless water heater,
Okay.
more efficient and eco-friendly.
And, looking at the elevations, looks like you'll have to get rid of some of those windows in your second floor bedroom, if you look at number 4. You might be able to keep those two diamond shape or those triangle shaped windows, but the other ones that are operables are in the roof line of what you're adding on.
Right, we'll make sure that somewhere in that bathroom, we'll add a window that's accessible to be operable.
Now, this is in your oh, yes, you're right, yeah, I got it. Right, so you'll have like transom windows up high, but you won't have anything low, the way it's drawn right now. Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean, well, I understand what you're saying. The two slider windows will be...
In the
well,
roof line.
But the one will be. I think the one will be, definitely. The other one to the right or to the south, I don't think will actually end up being in the roof line.
Yeah, it will.
Let's show,
If you look at this drawing, it
both
will.
of them are interfered with. The lower windows would have to go.
Like I said, I'm not the expert on this, but I will make sure that we at least... So that window is a very big window. We'll try to get a smaller window in there that...
Well, I think you could just put, if you're going to be doing work up there anyhow, you can just put two windows like the one on the right there, and just have a symmetrical clear story window on the top there. Do you follow me?
Right, I understand what you mean. The one there matches
The one
to
big
the
one
left,
on the right.
but matches to the left.
Well, the one on the left's down low. I'm just saying, get rid of that window.
Right.
The one below it, and the one
Right.
to the right of it, and then just mirror the one that's at the ridge.
Right, okay. But those
I mean,
those are both still not operable.
No, I understand that. You're going to have to do it on the other side, the south side, to get an operable window in there.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, you don't need an operable window. It's not, but it has to be ventilated. But
Well, we have a pretty good ventilation system up there. And,
no, I mean, it's not a code-related thing that you have to have natural ventilation in there. But if you're going to have the bath the way it is right now on that east, on this, what's all mixed up here? There's the north arrow. On the, that's east. On the backside in the roof line, you can have a window there.
Okay,
Anyway,
no, I appreciate the suggestion, and I understand what you're saying. We will try to put, and we like natural ventilation up there as well. So.
well, Velux has a window that's 4 roofs. And, it
And
just
we have
opens
that
up.
actually in our garage. We have one of those automatic Velux skylights that closes automatically
Right.
with the rain and everything.
Well, they're
So-
nice, and it goes in a roof
Right.
slope like that, so.
Okay. I was trying to answer your question if it had to be, I'm not familiar with the code, if it had to be in the second story, it had to be operable window to try to, that.
No, only bedrooms.
Right, okay.
It's either a mechanical vent or...
For a bathroom,
operable
yeah,
window for a
it's got to
bathroom.
be mechanically vented or naturally vented.
Okay.
But you have a choice. You don't have to have naturally vented if it doesn't work for you.
But I was thinking about the skylight before, so.
Well, skylight would be the window, because it's in the roof.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Velux window.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anything else?
I think I'm done.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this application? Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Mr. Tinsley?
Good evening. Bob Tinsley, 1949 Mount Avenue, and my wife Claire and I have no problems with this remodel and addition, and in fact, we hope it gets approved. They're not only good neighbors, we're good friends, and we love the children, and so we just like to see them stay here and tour right here with us. So we have no objections at all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? With that, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back for discussion and action.
Looks good to me.
My only comment would be that it just has to be consistent in terms of what we are approving. So we're approving the skylight and the window changes in the bathroom on the second floor. I mean, in the plan, it says something else, and so if we adopt this plan, it would also include, theoretically, removing the existing stair, too. So I just want to be clear that it's just the skylight and the window modifications on the second floor.
The stairs aren't moving.
No, I understand, but it says here on the drawings, that's the thing. And it doesn't say,
Would you like to craft a motion, Member Anglin, that correctly reflects your understanding of the corrections to the plans?
well, let's see, how would I say this? What is the scope of project? And approximately 85 square foot, one addition, so. Just let me read this from it.
Adam, I know you mean well, but you can't be talking unless you're at the microphone and being recorded. And so, I know you don't mean any harm, but you can't continue.
No, I think that I would propose that, if everybody agrees with this, to adopt the staff report with the clarification that the second floor work will include a skylight addition and modifications to the existing windows on the east elevation to coordinate with the new roof line, and the addition of a skylight if the owner chooses to do that as a venting window. The rest of it, I would take staff's recommendation and move to approve it with those modifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? You're on your way.
On the money.
Bob, will you please let Jeff know to please come back? We're next going to move to 8.3, a sign permit for 1899 Fennell Road, Arroyo Grande Villas. Before we begin with that, I will disclose that my business partner cum employer is a nearby property owner. I'm satisfied, based on my conversations with staff and on a related project, the FPPC, that this sort of indirect relationship is not sufficient for me to recuse myself. Nonetheless, I disclose it. With that said, the staff report, please, Bob.
Okay, this is a fairly simple application for a single sign. I lost my pointer. This is the site plan. Not very clear either. Along here, let me get to something that, this is the entry driveway that's between the two buildings on Fennell Road of the Affordable Housing Project. This goes into this parking lot that's in the middle of everything here, and that driveway is right here. The sign is going to go, is proposed for the right side of the entry driveway, shown here. So if you're facing the driveway from Fennell, the proposed sign, which looks like this, and there's maybe a clearer up here on this board, representation of the sign. Let me find my... So it's a 58-inch tall, 30-inch wide, 7-inch deep sign that is on a 2-inch base. This is the Bardesano sign at the entry to the service driveway. And if you've seen that sign, it's made out of metal. It's non-illuminated, and it's fabricated out of iron. And the sign they're proposing is matches that material more or less. These inches or these letters here are 5 3/8 inch, and then the address letters or numbers are 4 inches as required by CAL FIRE. So the sign is 2.5 feet back from the back of the sidewalk, which is right there, to the sign. It's a foot back from the property line, and I believe it's 10 feet back from the travel way. And the importance of that is visibility exiting and entering the driveway. So right now, it's proposed for the right side. Staff did have a concern. There's a unit right here. This is a front porch for this unit. There's a column right here for the porch, and it's right adjacent to there. There's a electrical box right in front, so it can't come any closer. And there's a light post almost right behind it. They put in landscaping along here too at this point, and we can, whatever happens, disregard. The landscaping will need to be adjusted no matter what to install this sign. So alternative locations may include further down the driveway. One consideration I've thought of is coming down. Most of the traffic's going to come eastbound down Fennell Road, and this sign in its proposed location is tucked behind this post, although it is towards the front. People trying to find this, I think it's going to be pretty evident if they have any idea what this development is, that they're in the right neighborhood and that this marks and identifies the entry. But they may go on past this, and rather than, if it were on this side, they have a little better shot at seeing down in there and identifying or seeing the sign. So one alternative location. Right here is too tight. It doesn't have the same width to the sidewalk as the other side. But perhaps further down where it widens out, and you can look down the driveway, about halfway down the driveway, and see the sign. There's a couple of other landscaped areas at the end of the driveway, either side, that may be suitable as well. Those are strictly alternatives to its proposed location. And that's about it, if you have any questions for me.
This would have been a good one to actually take a picture of that site at that location, so you can sort of imagine it here tonight. And you couldn't put it out in that bulb out because that's in the street right away. Is that right? So in other words, where you turn in.
Yeah, out here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the driveway apron, and then there's a little planter there. I believe there's not much room in there. Plus, then you get into a visibility issue of people
Being in the
coming in
planter.
and out.
Bob, it's difficult for me to align the sign with the face of building. Is it further north than the face of building?
The front door to this unit is right in here. This is their little porch.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a recessed porch, and then the face of the building is out further, a little further down Fennell. So there's a post and a post that support a covering over this porch to the front door, and it's right next to that post there.
When this project was originally approved, it was granted under some master development plan guidelines a reduced front setback.
Correct.
Was that setback measured to the building face or the covered porch?
To the property line,
Yes.
it was measured to the property line. I mean, that's how it was expressed in the, I believe in the
Well,
staff
from
report.
property line to, was it to face of building, or was the,
To the face of the building, yeah.
okay.
But they were aware that these porches were designed
Yes,
in.
I understand, but they didn't
decision
count,
makers.
they didn't count towards the approved setback distance. Okay, that's my only question.
Yeah, it was understood that this was a kind of a townhouse concept of the buildings being right up on the sidewalk in this case.
Understood. If there are no further questions of staff, we'll hear from the applicant and anyone else who's interested.
I have a photo that was just taken.
Oh, great.
Gotta love our iPhone.
I'll bet you can email that picture from your phone?
Yeah.
Do please so email it to Bob so he can enter it into the record after the meeting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Becky Bolt. I'm the project manager for Napa Valley Community Housing.
It's really tight.
We looked at a number of our properties and signs and this property and went with a sign similar to the Bartisonos because we felt that it would be consistent with the neighborhood. We are in a partnership somewhat with them in developing affordable housing for them, and we really liked that sign. The location, we selected that location because of the light pole that's directly behind it. It would light up the sign in the evenings without us actually having to do a sign lighted. And then we looked at the other side of the driveway as well, but it's limited, as Bob said, in size of where we would put it. The sign is going to be black, and it's aluminum, and it's engraved out with a white backing underneath so that it would, the white would show through on the signage.
Thanks, Becky. Questions of Ms. Bolt?
I just have one question. Chocolate brown wasn't the color you liked?
No, our light fixtures
Is black.
and the exterior signage on the remaining part of the buildings are all black. So we thought we would go with black.
Because I noticed the buildings are all earth tones. They don't have a lot of black on them. So one of the design standards is to try to match that as much as possible. But black's
And with
pretty
black
neutral.
is kind of like an accent color with the benches are black, things like that. That's why
Yeah.
we selected that. But we're open for change.
Any other questions to the applicant? Thank you. Anyone here tonight who wanted to just talk about this? Please, come up. Tell us who you are.
Everett Gooch. I live at 1905 Fennell. After receiving the letter last week, I took opportunity to look around town with a little more interest than what I probably do as I walk around daily, and also take a couple of rides. But looking around town, I didn't see a lot of consistency in terms of signage between multiple residents and neighborhoods and those kinds of things. Some have signs and some don't. A couple of the condo complexes do have signs. A couple of them do not, and I'm not sure why. It seems to me that, you know, if there are numbers in front of the complex or in front of the residences, you shouldn't really need a sign. I mean, I have numbers on the front of my house, but I don't have a sign. Maybe I'm missing something, I'm not sure. But there does seem to be a consistency relative. I mean, I'd like to address the logos. I don't have any particular issue with the sign itself because the sign at the Bar de Sono, next property down, is similar to that, and I could see where they would want something similar. But I don't quite understand the reason for identifying the owner of the property with the logo and the written, and I don't really understand the other logos. As I know what they are, I'm not sure why they're there. I also took a ride to St. Helena and to Napa to look at some of the other properties that the Napa Valley Community Housing has. And they have signs in front of them, at least the ones that I looked at. And none of those signs identify the owner of the property, nor do they have any other logos on them. As I understand it, I don't know if they're owned properties or just managed properties, but there are a couple of other here in town, and to my knowledge, they don't have signs in front of them either. But if you look at the other businesses in town, not residences, but businesses, I didn't notice any that had ownership, unless the owner is the name of the business. I didn't really notice any signs that had a footnote at the bottom of the sign saying who owned the property. So I would ask that the logos go. And also, I like the comments that were made earlier by staff relative to moving the sign further back on the property on the left side of the driveway. I think that would improve it a lot. So those would be my general comments.
Thank you.
And I, did you happen to see the photograph that I left the other day?
Pass these around. I submitted those photos.
The two on the top are the ones in St. Helena. The left-hand side and the bottom is one that is in Napa near the state hospital. And then there's Garrote Place that's right across the street. And you can see what the size of that sign is. It's right down on the ground, and it's 24 inches wide and 18 inches high. So I think, that could very well be a model.
Thank you. We'll have a discussion. We won't close the public hearing in case we need further clarification from the applicant. I'm going to start. My questions earlier were leading to this. I think an identification sign is appropriate. Our sign ordinance, we've had several residential projects with signage, is fairly silent on whether the sign ordinance is geared towards residential. We're usually trying to take commercial standards and apply them to residential. With that said, at 5 feet tall, I think the sign is too tall and should at a minimum comply with our requirements for fences, screens, or hedges within the front setback, which is no taller than 3 feet. Or alternatively, move it back so that it at least complies with the front setback for what this project was approved. Granted, it was reduced setback. So from my perspective, I'd want to see the sign either shrink 2 feet in height or move back to comply with the project front setback. We'll continue the discussion with other members.
I have to agree. I know the Bar de Sono sign is similar, but I agree. If you look around at all the signs around town, they're all fairly low to the ground. All of the other housing, and whether it's Burgundy Commons, Girardi, I think they're kind of a much more minimal sign. I also actually hadn't terribly thought about it, but I think the gentleman from the public, I don't like, even though I am totally a supporter of Napa Valley Community Housing, I think there's a lot of great work. I'm glad we have low-income housing. I do not like the logos on the sign. None of the other properties around town have anything like that. There aren't any exactly like this development, I will agree, but I think that's kind of starts looking like a privatization of town and corporation type look to it, and I don't appreciate that. So I'd be supportive of it, the reduction of 2 feet. Move it back. If you want to move it back on the left side, that concerns me a little bit, because anybody coming the other way on Finnell is just not going to see it if it's that far back on the left-hand side. So I'd be in support of reducing it by 2 feet, removing those logos.
I just think that the site is very tight to put a sign there. And I think that the whole reason for the sign is really to identify the street address. So what I was wondering was, given the square feet of sign, could we have 2 signs that were reduced in size and have one facing, as you come down Finnell this way, and, I mean, a mirror image of it. So you'd have 2 signs, essentially, so that whichever direction you were driving, you would see the sign. I would also, so that would be contingent on the square footage of signs that we might have available. I think that 3 feet, which is a front yard fence height, would be a good height for it, which would be more in keeping with the residential quality of it, scale of it. And if you did eliminate the logo, and I agree with Rob in terms of the operator of the project, if you didn't have that identification, you would get that much more square footage in the sign. So essentially, you could have Arroyo Grande Villas and the street address in 2 locations on a smaller scale. And so you would be able to clearly see it as you came down. Also, by going parallel to the side of the building, it gets less pinched in there to the front porch of the house, the adjacent house.
Can I amend something? I don't like having the property owner logos on there. I do appreciate the handicap accessible logo, so I want to make that clear. I don't personally like the aesthetic look of it, but I think it's important for us to provide that knowledge to individuals.
Why is the NVCHA stated on there? Is there a reason?
I think just because of the operators.
Yeah.
I think you're probably proud of the project, and I certainly think you should be.
Yes, we are very proud of that project. It's turning out beautiful. We'd be happy to take the NVCH logo off. However, the other 2 logos legally cannot come off because it's a federally funded project, and those logos have to stay on any signage.
And the reason I ask is it appears I might be the only one who agrees to have it on there, so
Yes,
that
it's an
was my
equal
question.
housing opportunity logo, and then we have a number of handicap accessible units, so that has to stay on there as well.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to shrink the sign, and so.
Mr. Gates, any comments before we try to?
No, I think it's all been said.
So, Becky, you've heard several comments. Can you maybe summarize what you might be willing to revise your proposal to? That will help us craft a motion.
We'd be happy to remove NVCH's logo. We can shrink the sign down to 3 feet, 2 feet, whatever, the board would like. We would like to keep the location where it is because of the close proximity to the street, and that most people will be coming from Yount Street up to the project that way. It is the only multifamily apartment complex on the street, so we felt that with the address being what it is, 1899 Finnell, and then the units are numbered individually, 101, so people need to know where 1899 is before they can find the units.
Thank you. So I think it's time to entertain a motion. I will support something that retains 1 sign rather than 2. But is there a motion that someone can proffer that incorporates what we've heard?
I would move to approve the sign with the limitations that it be no higher than the fence requirement, which would be 3 feet at the current location as proposed, with the removal of the NVCH logo.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thanks very much.
So that was, just to be clear, 3-foot height maximum and remove the Napa Valley Community Housing logo
Check.
And then, I
in
guess,
the location proposed.
the question would be, would they center the two other logos underneath 1899? I mean, it would make sense that you would do something like that, so there'd be some symmetry.
So let's have an amended motion and not vote on one.
Okay.
So if we can have an amended motion, please, that incorporates that. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, let's amend the motion to be at the current location, 3 feet height limit, remove the NVCH logo, and center the other two logos on the sign.
Thank you. I'll second that. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carry on. Next, we'll move to item 8.4 for 16 Ivy Court.
I'm going to have to recuse myself on this because I'm within the 500 feet of the project.
Thank you. Pray continue, Bob.
This is a item I will note. A supplemental sheet was placed at your spot there that the analysis that was on the table on the first page has been reworked, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay. All right. This probably be better looking at this one here, but what it is, a single-family dwelling with a detached accessory building at 16 Ivy Court. The back portion of there's a single-family dwelling, Ivy Court, detached accessory building, and then Hopper Creek is channelized for this segment behind on the rear portion of the house. The property line goes to center line of creek in this case, and then there is a 12-foot from center line of channel to the top of bank, which is also about the same location, coterminous with the fence line as well, on the rear, is located there. Now, from the center line of creek to this structure, this accessory building, is 17 feet 3 inches. That is the nature of the variance request has to do with the request to convert that accessory building into a second unit, which will necessitate the addition of 45 square feet at this portion. And the reason the applicant wants to do that is their aim is to use this as habitable space. Currently, under our ordinance, accessory buildings cannot be used as habitable space. You can't live in it. So in order to have this as livable space, they want to convert it to a second dwelling unit with the addition of that extra square footage there. The problem is that now doing that, accessory buildings have different setback requirements. They can be 5 feet from rear and side property lines. This one was built non-conforming some years ago. That's not really, the determination of when that was built is uncertain. It could have been back to when, prior to incorporation of the town. There was an episode in 1999 where they were doing some re-roofing, and the building department got involved in stopping them from doing that and then getting permits for the work they were doing. Different owners, two owners ago. So they're 17 feet 3 inches from center line of creek. They need to be 35 feet. The creek setback is 35 feet from center line of creek, or, as we discussed earlier, 10 feet from top of bank. They're within both of those, and that's the analysis that's in this table here that I reworked. So the first one is you have just your standard 20-foot setback requirement for habitable buildings for a second unit. They are 17 feet 3 inches, so they're into that setback 2 feet 9 inches. The creek setback overlay, they're required to be 35 feet from center line. They're 17 feet 3 inches, and that means they're 17 feet 9 inches into the creek overlay. And I will note this addition they're proposing is also totally within the 35-foot creek overlay setback. Additionally, they're required to be 10 feet from top of bank, and right now the structure is approximately 5 feet 3 inches from top of bank, so they're into that setback by 4 feet 9 inches. So that's the nature of their request for variances. They are asking in order to move ahead with converting this from an accessory building to livable space. By that addition, they would need to put them into a whole new ball game as far as setbacks. It's already deficient in setbacks as far as the creek setback is concerned, and they are attempting to secure a variance for those setbacks. As discussed in the staff report, variances are, the findings are listed here on starting on page 3. They're fairly difficult to make, even in most cases they're difficult to make, and they have to do with usually some physical condition on a piece of property that prevents someone from developing their property in the typical sense and according to development standards, and that would mean a slope, a rock outcropping, a tree that happens to be where they need to have a setback, and maybe it drops off and it's impractical to build on that side, so they would request a variance. The idea, you see a lot of this language talking about enjoyment of property rights that's enjoyed by others, and if they don't get the variance, they're prevented from enjoying their property in the same way others in the same zone district enjoy their property, and that they're not given a special privilege by the approval of the variance. Well, we went through all of these, and as you can see through the analysis that staff was unable to suggest a finding that could be made for those variance findings. There's a separate set of, for the creek setback, separate set of findings. We were able to make those for the most part because the structure's already there sitting in the creek setback, most of it. And we were noting that it's not going to compound that, except we could not make it for the new addition. That's a new feature on the building that isn't there, is not an existing condition. So that was the analysis. We were, page 3, pretty much unable to make the findings for the variance. And I will note that should somehow the findings be made and the variance approved, they would have to, this is a non-conforming building, that accessory building, as I mentioned, and non-conforming buildings can only be expanded through a use permit process that they would need to have approved by the town council, and then they would also have to secure design review for that small addition that they are proposing. It's a design review application for that. So that's where it stands. They would, if they got the variance, they would then go on for the use permit through council. We have a very liberal, when it comes to non-conforming buildings, standard in this town. Many other jurisdictions, the idea of a non-conforming building is to get rid of it eventually, and they put those buildings on amortization schedules that are based on the useful life of the building, and there's a date certain out there that they actually have to go in and remove the building and make it conforming to the standards. In any case, what's very common elsewhere is that non-conforming buildings, because they want them to go away, cannot be enlarged or increased in area at any time. They can be kept in good repair in some systems, but they cannot be enlarged. In this case, under our standards, you can add on to a non-conforming building with a use permit. So they would need to secure that entitlement as well.
Thank you, Bob. Before we delve into questions of staff, I want to make clear that while we can consider all evidence in evaluating an application, for this particular application, we are only here to decide our opinion of the rear setback for a second dwelling unit. Correct?
Correct.
So, again, we can consider all the evidence before us, but we are not acting in favor or against a reduced Hopper Creek setback. We are only here to decide reduced setback for a second dwelling unit. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that said, I'll continue with questions of staff. I think you answered this earlier. Is there any evidence that the existing structure was constructed illegally? Any firm evidence?
No, I pulled the file on that, and the record shows the action taken by, at the time, county building inspector who did our building inspections back at that time, and the record indicated he had them stop work, submit a full set of plans for what they were doing, and it, from what I could tell, was started by re-roofing, and
Not the repair work that was fairly recent, but its original construction. Is there any evidence that it was built contrary to the then applicable laws?
I don't have anything in the file that would indicate that.
Those are my only questions. Anyone else, questions of staff?
That it was, and I'll clarify that if you're asking, was it built in non-compliance to our setback? Well, to our creek setback standard, at least. And there was nothing, even though they went through this, that's when I would have expected a discussion and vetting of its
Provenance, if you will?
well, validity as a structure, that it was okayed somehow. There are such things as older structures that predate ordinances, and they're there, and that's the way it is. And there was no investigation at that time that was documented.
Okay. I presume the applicant would like to speak to this. Cindy?
Hello. Cindy Gates from Gates Estates, and I represent both the buyer and the seller. Burgess Chan is the buyer, and Nancy Carter here is our seller. First of all, I think, if you will, Bob, put in the disc that I took several pictures so you could see the state of the building and the condition that it's in, and that it is up to current standard of building code, and I think that's important to show you. The intent for the buyer to do this modification started with the fact that he has 3 boys and just wanted to put a bathroom in that little building just to accommodate his 2 sons staying overnight out there. This is going to be their vacation home, and they plan to be here for years to come. Their plan is not to rent it out, not to do anything other than have it for family use right now. Then we found out that in just adding a bathroom, you would need to add the kitchen and the other to make it a habitable unit. The pictures in the beginning show the long driveway and show that it does have enough off-street parking to accommodate that of a second unit. The other thing we thought of, and we also have excellent parking behind the fence. And there's the unit in front of you there, showing the distance on the side of the house to the unit. That's the little notch out in the building there that they wanted to, that they were proposing to put a bathroom in keeping with the side setbacks. And that's the back fence to the current building. I have a better picture of that. So that shows you the quality of the building. It's very, very nice. There's the ditch behind, or the Hopper Creek runway right there. And it shows that it's all cemented, and it's just a cement culvert, if you will. And it's not a natural dirt-type stream, so that I don't expect erosion to happen with a concrete waterway there. So I thought that would be in our benefit. That's a better picture of that it is all concrete. So hopefully, with the concrete there, I was thinking that that would reduce the level of erosion through the years, so that if you did see that this was a viable little unit, to add a bathroom and a little kitchenette to make it up to code with what the county expects, and to help this little family, at least accommodate their family there so they have enough bedrooms. The current main structure is only 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, so it leaves it a little small for the family. So hopefully that there answers your questions to the level of quality that the little building is, and that shows the interior and the hardwood floors.
Cindy, I have a question. You mentioned that the intent is to provide essentially a bedroom for the buyer's sons.
Right.
The county's planning regulations, to which we're not subject, though, but nonetheless I think are useful, make a key distinction between a second dwelling unit, kitchen, and a guest house. So if the intended use is for boys to have a bedroom and perhaps not have to go outdoors and then into another house to use a bathroom, why is the kitchenette a key component?
It wasn't for us. We were told that we had to do that to get a bathroom.
By whom?
The clarification is, if they just use it as a bedroom, now it's an accessory building that's habitable, and that's the hang-up is...
Who's making this determination?
It's in the zoning ordinance.
In our
Yes.
Yountville zoning ordinance, that if we don't allow remote guest houses, if you will, unless they're
Accessory buildings that are habitable.
unless they're fully functioning second dwelling units.
That was the only way we could figure out how that building could be used for habitation.
All right.
And it's the bathroom itself that makes it habitable. They can do whatever with what they want with the space. But adding the bathroom is now what makes it habitable space.
I think it would be making conditioning. They could say walk from one conditioned space into another to use the bathroom. I think if it's got HVAC is what makes it livable.
They call it conditioned space. It's heated and cooled. And
Okay. So any other questions of the applicant, or Cindy, did you have anything else you wanted to share with us?
No, I don't think so. I think I covered everything, but if I think of something, hopefully I can add something at another time.
Okay.
But that was the primary reason that the buyer did want to do something, was just to simply add a bathroom for the boys. So, anyway, thank you.
Mrs. Alexander, are you here to speak to this item?
My name is Pat Alexander. I live at 6527 Heather Street. Welcome to all the new Design Review Board members. It's a difficult job, but I know you can do it. I also speak for my neighbors directly beside me to the left at 6521 Heather Street. That's Dawn and Marilyn Locke. They couldn't be here this evening. They are a little bit older and they're not able to move around. They could not attend the meeting, and they said to please speak up on their behalf. If you need further support information or statements from them, they'd be more than happy to provide it. Those pictures were excellent that Cindy brought up, because it shows the heart of what we're talking about right now. So what happened was, I'd like to give you just a little bit of history. Back in 1999, it was about Friday afternoon at 5:45, when all of a sudden there was a huge demolition going on in our backyard. So we run to the back, and there was a potting shed out there. It was very old. It was coming apart, covered with termites. Everything was down. Well, the man who owned the property completely demolished the entire potting shed, took it down, and worked 24 hours a day. He stopped at 10 o'clock at night, started at 6 a.m. in the morning. We complained nonstop. The very next morning, at Monday, 8 o'clock, I ran as fast as I could to the town planning department and said, no, this is not a replacement of the barn. This is not a potting barn. This is a full-on dwelling with windows everywhere. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And I was told, no, Pat, that's fine. This is a accessory building. And I said, but it's not. Go see it. This is not an accessory building. I called the county. The county said, yes, we do have restrictions. They did send someone out, and there was a desist order, and they had to stop. They had to pay a fine, and I was assured by my town, I was assured by the county, don't worry, this is a fancy potting barn. There's no intention of this becoming a habitable unit because it does not have the proper requirements. It does not have a kitchenette. It does not have the bathroom. And we were assured that no matter what, this was not going to be approved. The builder at the time, basically said, within time this will be, just wait, Pat. And that was just a very sore spot for me. It was a foot in the door, and today, now there's a proposal for a second dwelling to go on. So I ask you, please, please pay attention to what's happening here. It is not okay with any of us who are directly in back of this property. I've got 2 pictures here that show you how close this property is. And actually, those pictures are really quite good, but I'd still like to pass these around. And I can show you, this was taken from my back porch. You can toss an underhand throw how close that building is to the property. So if I can just pass these to you for just a little bit of information. So right off the bat, Jason, could you please verify that you're only talking about today, considering whether this can be considered a habitable unit, and you're going to be changing it from an outbuilding to a habitable unit. Is that correct?
The issue before us, while we can consider all evidence related to the project to make our decision today is limited to whether to allow a reduced setback for a second dwelling unit. So conversion of the accessory structure into a second dwelling unit.
Thank you so much.
We can carve off or not carve off the addition portion, but we're just here talking about the variance request for the reduced setback. If
Great.
that's granted, there still needs to be design review.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. An accessory structure has a certain criteria to it. An accessory structure is defined as a non-habitable building that is subordinate and complementary to the primary use of the property. Now, in this case, the primary use of this property is a single dwelling unit. This was originally constructed as a potting barn. Now, when you're looking at accessory structures, the reason why there's a certain criteria for whether you can turn it into a habitable structure, accessory structures have lesser impact on adjoining and nearby properties in terms of noise, lighting, hours of operation, to name just a few. This is all findings of the town. The town is fully saying this is not a habitable structure. This is accessory. Again, if you, well, I'm sorry, let me move on. So when you look at the design ordinance criteria, where an accessory structure meets the requirements, there are certain requirements you simply must look at. Number one, it has to include permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. This was not designed that way. This is not within the proper setbacks, not only for the creek overlay, but our town's own criteria for having a second dwelling on a property. So I would ask, please pay attention to these laws that we put into place. Also understand that when this building was built, it was completely happened over a 48-hour period from 5:45 on a Friday till 8 o'clock in the morning, when I could race myself down to the office to point out that this is not a potting barn. Pardon me, second page. There are creekside overlay districts. We have really defined criteria about how close you can build from the bank to the center line of the creek and to your property line. Two, there is a channel in back of Hopper Creek. We didn't have you guys around 42 years ago when they were first putting this in. If so, we would have prepared that riparian. We would have protected the creek. Right now, Hopper Creek needs you to stick by what was put into place years and years ago. Now, when we look at the criteria for a variance, this is not meeting the criteria for a variance. This is not meeting any of the things that we've designed for second or secondary residences on a property. Please pay attention to what our town has recommended. Most importantly, it says this variance does not constitute a grant of special privilege that is inconsistent with limitations. The fact is that if you granted this variance, it's unfair. None of us are allowed to do this. None of us are allowed to go ahead and say, you know what, I think I'm going to build a second dwelling unit right on the property line. It was never intended to be a secondary unit. It was a replacement of a potting shed. And unfortunately, it's not very transparent that this was a potting shed. This looks like it was a full-on dwelling, and it's trying to circumvent your rules. I would ask that you please stand up and protect those rules. None of my neighbors agree with this. We're not okay with this, not in terms of noise, not in terms of fairness, because if you open up this variance to one person, you open it up to 16 of us on that property line. It's not fair. We're holding our property rights and enjoyment to your following of the rules and regulation. I trust and I know that you'll do the right thing. The last thing I wanted to look at is if you look at the setback types and if you look at the variance requesting, these don't in any way or shape conform to our criteria. I'm repeating myself, so I don't want to repeat myself again, but do you have any questions from us, those of us who live along this line, who live within whisper distance from our property lines?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I will close the public hearing, and we will discuss it and take action on the request for reduced setback for proposed second dwelling. Who'd like to begin?
I can begin again. I have to say, I love the idea. I think that's great. I love having more families here in town. All of the above. I really don't feel like I can approve this variance. I think just the fact that this particular part of the creek has been concreted in, which is its own travesty, I really feel like then by allowing this reduced setback, we are granting special privilege to the individuals who live on the creek in a concreted area. I come from living in L.A., where unfortunately the L.A. River is completely concreted in now, and I think that's sad. But I think by allowing the people who are on concreted sections to have reduced setbacks, and those people who are not, that is by definition granting a special privilege to those people who live on that particular part of the riparian habitat, which unfortunately is no longer there. So that's my big catching piece. I don't feel like I really can approve this, no matter how much I like the plan.
Jeff? I'll say, I don't think it matters how nice the structure is. I have a shed at my home, an accessory structure, and I made it very nice. I think that's immaterial. The standard I try to use when I look at these is, what would we approve were it new? And were it new, we would not allow something that could be occupied 24 hours a day to have this great deviation from the setback. I'll say that if the application were limited to simply converting an existing space, I might have a more open mind. I think the creek setback variance requests, while we're not here to decide those, are going to be exceedingly onerous to secure. Again, with the second unit, as we would be looking at potential impacts to adjoining property, here the problem is with the rear setback, not perhaps the side setbacks. Nonetheless, the findings are extraordinarily difficult to make. I would support something that involves repairing, regardless of how nicely, an existing legally non-conforming use, such as this is, or maintaining a legally non-conforming use. That's been our practice It's in our ordinance. This seems to be a different ball of wax altogether. A change or intensification of use. Gentlemen, do either of you have anything you'd care to say before we entertain a motion?
Nothing.
So is there a motion to approve a reduced rear setback? Hearing none, there's no action taken. Thanks, good night. We will now move along to staff and board reports. Bob, if I can inverse that order.
The last one, you...
We took no action.
Okay.
Right. The proposal before us was to approve something. We took no action on it altogether. I think through parliamentary procedure, it's not necessary for us to
So that's a
vote in the
functional
negative.
denial.
Yeah, yes, but anyway, our rules of order are like 2 pages, so I get to make some. Thank you for coming back. I'm glad you were- Bob, so for staff and board reports, if I invert the order, we noticed earlier when asked that our conflict map is out of date. It still shows Steve Henderson. So we
have, no,
Jason.
there's a up-to-date one of the last,
I don't think anyone here has it.
Yeah, I never got one, if there was
okay.
one.
the
It's
one
in
I
the
have-
council's packets, or they're in their binders. I've got one in mine. It shows up-to-date as the last membership, but I'll have to re-up it.
Right. So there's that. Secondly, I think we need to elect, even though it's for one more meeting, a vice chair. Or can we simply,
One more meeting because,
I think in September, we'll be electing new positions altogether. But we, am I right? Or is that October?
What do you mean, new positions?
New chair.
new chair and vice
Oh.
chair.
Terms will expire, regardless.
Your terms on the board?
No.
No.
Oh, as a
vice
chair.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Which are a year, am I correct?
Pardon?
They're a year.
That's right. So
I'll
without a
check on
curve.
it. It's coming up, so
Okay. All right.
we'll
That's
put
all.
that on the agenda for piece of business.
Excellent. And I'll encourage others to think about it while I enjoy it. As I mentioned to Rob, I think it's helpful for organizations like this to have turnover. So I encourage all of you to seek it.
I think he's encouraging us not to nominate him.
I was just about to do that. I'm impressed.
That was really nicely done.
Very
I
nicely
think
done.
it's good for organizations to have turnover, though.
Bob, I would like to ask that the 2 new members get binders with up-to-date 3 new members. Get
Unless you're not counting yourself.
No,
as
I
a
wasn't
returning
counting
member.
myself, no.
Okay.
My binder's way out of date. So up-to-date binders with
You did not get anything from Michelle?
no. I didn't. Did anybody else?
Oh, all right, well, I thought
She said she was getting something. She said she was getting something out at the orientation, but we never fully. got
okay,
it.
I thought that was done, but I will get that to you.
And I imagine they'll have the new map. I just want to make sure, though, I'm not getting a new binder. I do want to have a map because I think I might have a conflict coming up with new development.
Okay.
And I could go pace it out by my feet, but I think you probably have more accurate.
No, I'll get it down. to
I
an
liked how Jason did it.
Okay, ducks. All right.
Anything big coming up?
All from us, anything from you?
Let's see. I can give you a little bit of update about what's going on business-wise with us. So you know what's going on in town. We were expecting, Hillstone submitted an application. That's where Napa Valley Grill. Hillstone's the corporation that bought Washington Square. And as long as I've been here, I always have to, Washington Park, Washington Square, like Starboard Port. I just can't get it straight. So they're coming in with the application to redevelop the restaurant, and be a fairly big change for that site. They're going to take down the existing building, rebuild a new restaurant.
Oh, really?
The whole space or just the restaurant?
Well,
Or
if you
all of
think
the outlying banquet space as well?
Yeah, they're getting rid of that.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So all those buildings at the,
Yeah, if you think of this
Gerard.
site and divide it on a north-south axis, everything towards Highway 29 is going to be kind of redone. And everything towards Washington is going to essentially remain the same, but get some improvements made. They have, like 4 or 5 different paving patterns going on throughout that thing.
Right.
And unify that, do some landscaping, new lighting. So they're going to do a remodel on the rest of their balance
so
of it.
would Napa Valley Bike Tours be sort of the
They're- yeah,
easternmost
yeah, they're-
kind of line?
Everything, and to the gas station even, and going to remain. The tenants will remain. As far as we know, I'm not in on their negotiation with the tenants, but that's basically been our information.
Is it the ownership of Rutherford Grill?
Yes,
Yes.
it's a corporation out of Houston.
Right.
And they have been great to work with, so I'm expecting good stuff from
Yeah,
them.
it could be great.
Any idea as to when they might start that?
Well, they're wanting to go to the ZDRB for, let's see, I think a September meeting, and then they'll go on to council the first meeting on the 5th. Now, we've got some, at staff level, concerns about, just so everybody knows, we have a grading prohibition, an ordinance that prohibits mass grading, similar to the county, between October 15th and April
First.
1st. So if you're out there moving, mass grading is usually more than a foot, going down a foot, that's considered mass grading. It's the rainy season deal, and there's exceptions to it depending on, they can work with the town engineer based on weather reports of what it's looking like, and do some work limited, but they're trying to, it doesn't leave them much time if they go on the 5th. They're going to be right against that, and it could be that that's going to slow them down. They're doing quite a bit of, ideally, they would do the footprints of the building, and then they can work on the buildings through the winter. But they're going to be making changes to the parking lot as well. They're going to do some stormwater management to where there'll be pitching grades in the opposite direction they're going now. And that's going to require some amount of grading that would conflict if they were in the prohibition season. The worst possible scenario happened on Yountville Square when that was being built. That was a very wet winter, and they started right at almost the end of the cutoff. They tore the site up. There's an orchard in that site, and they took the trees down. They were mostly dead, prune trees or something. There's a house in the middle, and that was gone. They just ripped into the site. Then it started raining really hard, and then it would clear up a little bit, and they go out and rip up some more, and then they button it up again. And in the end, they almost just threw in the towel. They built a big lake in the middle to hold water, stormwater, and then they had to bring in these filtration units that looked like just huge, I don't know, they were tanks that stood on end, and there was 2 or 3 of them, and they were filtering the water out of that little lake they created in the middle before it's introduced into the creek or Beard Ditch. And I'm sure it cost them, not only in time, a lot of money to set that little system up. Had they just waited and not disturbed anything, they probably would have been better off. But that particular winter was really bad. So there's these concerns. Last winter, people were able to get some stuff done with it's touch and go, but there were spells where 2-3 weeks go by, no rain. So anyway, that's what's going on with that project, and that'll be coming at you in September. And they they're trying to compress the approval process into preliminary and final into one step. They're not going to a concept because there's already been a restaurant on the site. They're really redeveloping a restaurant. We know they're going to do a restaurant, there's no question. They will come to you with a very complete, that's the only way they're going to do it in one step, very complete A to Z, everything, landscape, lighting, everything, plan for you, and do a presentation. So that's coming at you. There's some other stuff going on that hasn't been submitted for yet, that will be shortly. There are projects in town. There's just smaller stuff. The balloon company that operates out of Washington Square will no longer be able to operate there. They launched there. So they have gone into negotiation with the golf course, and they're going to launch or come in for a use permit to launch from the golf course. Now, we're going to do a 10-day notice of pending action on that for the reason that another balloon company went to the council, same exact proposal. Their deal fell through for whatever, I don't know the background to why they're not launching from there, but they are not. But this other balloon company from Washington Square, same setup that the council's already approved, and so we're going to 10-day notice on that.
Is that other balloon company that went first, are they still in business?
Yes, but they had an alternate permission to launch from the wine train station. And so it's probably where.
And they're continuing to do that, right?
As far as I know, I haven't gotten up at 6:30 to do lunch.
They haven't been doing
I
this for
haven't
a
seen
while.
any balloons all summer, really.
Maybe they
It's been all the
stopped.
fall.
I remember them doing that, though, because
They-
it seemed
they
to be a
still are.
small site for a big balloon.
They would do it, and they do them right after each other. Do
Yeah.
one up, get another one out, go up.
V Wine Cellar, their name? Yeah, over at V Marketplace. They are coming in for an amendment to their use permit that amounts to more expanded, they'll operate more like a wine lounge in that they can serve by the glass out on their terraces that they have. Right now, technically, they're tasting, and they can't do that. They are one of our wine tasting businesses that has a license from ABC that allows them to do that. It's our local use permit restrictions that prevent them from doing that.
Right.
So they're going to come, and that will be approved by the council if it gets approved. But I don't think that's going to come before you because it's essentially a use permit item of an existing use. We had a workshop last Thursday night.
Half of one.
What's that?
Half of one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, right. A third, actually a third.
3 items on there. Well, it's probably about half because that was the longer item and then the other 2 were shorter. And the item they did get through was a discussion of uses in the residential scale commercial zone district. And what was up for discussion was the idea, well, our current restrictions have this language in there that it would indicate the uses going in there cannot be supported, or uses that are supported by visitors cannot be approved in there. And we have no way of measuring that. Moreover, there's probably never, at this point, for the foreseeable future, nobody going to step up and that could make it on a business that was not supported by visitors. So, and I guess what we staff considered acknowledgement of the reality of the market, do we want to continue with that language on our books? Or do we want to just say, It's called residential scale commercial. We'll retain, part of that was the idea that the building sizes will be in scale with the adjoining residential, and we're not suggesting that change. We're not suggesting they start allowing inns and restaurants. We will be very clear that, actually clearer than the existing ordinances on restaurants, because it leaves a little wiggle room that if you can somehow make your case that you're going to not depend on visitors, and it's just going to be people in town eating there mostly, then you're good. So we don't even want to hang that out there for anyone to tantalize anyone and get into the discussion. We're just going to, no restaurants, no new restaurants, no new inns. And then it's sort of everything else is eligible, but we're going to increase the amount of retail diversity that's required per our retail diversity policy that some of you may be aware of. We instituted because of the increase in the number of tasting rooms. We were afraid everything's going to tasting rooms, so we have nothing else. So we instituted this policy that 25% of the floor area had to be some other kind of retail. And then there was some language in there in guiding them as to what that other retail may be. Something reflecting the valley, the agriculture of the valley, produced in the valley. But we're going to, in this change, probably make that even more stringent a requirement.
How do you propose to define a restaurant? That is to say, when does a tasting room that offers complimentary food cease to be a tasting room and become a deli?
That's another discussion we started having with the council, separate from this last one. You know, we don't even have a definition that applies to all commercial zones of restaurant, and that's what we do here. We're a town of inns and restaurants, and we don't have a clear definition of what a restaurant is. So part of that effort was to define what a restaurant is, define what a tasting room is, define what a wine bar is, distinct from a tasting room. And we had fashioned all of these definitions, and sometimes you get into some weird twists and turns and minutia to define what a restaurant is as opposed to a deli or some other kind of a place where you could get food. And you really do, because some people, at one point somebody wanted an ice cream shop in the RSC, and this was definitely going to rely on visitors. And there was a person contending that's a restaurant, and I was telling them, no, it's not a restaurant, it's an ice cream shop. You know, so you get into those little interpretations where if it serves someone's point of view to prohibit it, they're going to take a very broad and sweeping definition or application of the definition, and you got to really fashion them to where you block out and put borders around what it is and isn't, and that's when it gets tricky.
So is that, given that discussion you had last week, Thursday, and those handouts you had, which were very telling because of the lack of consistency and because of the wording, so is the staff beginning to rewrite those? Is that in the process now? Is that something in the near future?
Yeah. What we did following the meeting was and it was a big deal for us to get the consensus we did from the council. What we did...
I didn't know you got consensus. But
well,
okay.
we thought we heard that they were on board with what we were suggesting. And, I mean, frequently, you know, you'll go down the line and you'll get various comments, and then they say, you have enough staff? And you're wondering, well, what does everybody want? I got the individuals, but that's always a problem for staff, is determining what the pleasure of the council in total as a group is. Now, there may be dissenters that aren't on board with the whole package. That's fine. But what is the general consensus? And that's really hard to get. So we thought we got good direction. That's why I was kind of pressing them at the end there, like, so we want to hear what you want here and try to be clear on it. So now we're going, and then following up to that, I sent them all an email, and I solicited their written comments, and we're going to bundle all that into what we think the consensus is, take it to them, to a meeting, and go, this is the direction we believe came out of that meeting. And if you concur with that, we're going to write this up, and it's going to be a big effort because the language about residential serving and prohibiting things and when it's supposed to be for residences and that emphasis and encouragement, some things are encouraged and others it's required. And the whole thing, actually in the general plan about the stance they take that protecting uses that serve residences are just marbled throughout all those documents of the general plan, design ordinance, zoning ordinance. We got to go through and find all that language and change it, or get it consistent with what the new line is.
Yeah, because I thought it was pretty clear that they all agreed that there are no local serving, 100% local serving businesses in this town.
And they're moving away from that
And
kind of
moving away from
language.
that language, yeah.
That's what we thought we heard, and that's what we're going to take back to them.
Yeah, that's what I
and
heard.
Get it checked out. So, and the other two discussions we didn't get to that night had to do with retained uses, looking at the, 4 we have left, and now there's an application in to change one of those to just rezone it and change the land use designation, so then we'd be down to 3.
For Lavender,
Bordeaux, Lavender, and
Cindy's.
French Laundry. Cindy's would be not through her own initiative, but through the adjoining lots initiative. Rossi were those north of, wedged between Cindy and
Where
Edward
they're doing the
James.
redevelopment of the apartments.
Yeah. That's the moving force behind the application. The project sponsor is Rossi and Jessup, and they want to get it changed, put in a commercial use there. And then we thought it made perfect sense since it's already, prior to Cindy, it was Mosswood. It's always been commercial, way back the post office, I guess, to just incorporate that to the corner.
In the residential scale commercial.
Yes.
I have a question about Gordon's, and wasn't Gordon's a retained use? But didn't that lapse?
Yeah, what happened there is they did the
What is happening there?
North Washington Task Force. Yeah, that's what, back in the late 90s, 98, 99.
I also remember that.
And there was a bunch of stars up there on the east side of Washington, Punches, McGrath's, all of that. And they went in and even Burgundy House across the street. And they created that new zone district, Old Town Commercial, and just incorporated all those into a commercial district.
Their use permit expired. I
Yeah, right,
think,
because
but-
they had that-
But the underlying zoning was changed 10 years
Previously,
ago.
yeah.
So,
So
and
they
then
lost
with-
I'm sorry, I'm just kind of curious about that property because they had this viable kind of use and they let it lapse, and so now they can't serve. I'm not sure, I forget which part of it, the ability to serve wine or,
you're talking about the current status of Gordon's?
yeah.
The current status of Gordon's is we had them pull a permit that kept their entitlement alive, and then that was lapsing, and we go, you got to do something. You got to call for one every 6 months, an inspection to keep the permit alive, and they did perform work and call for an inspection. So they're kind of, they're in this
It's
holding
still in
pattern.
force. They still do like a
Yes,
little
it's still
plumbing
in
and then they
force.
call for an inspection.
Yeah, they could still be a restaurant, still serve wine.
Oh, okay. All
We
right.
don't want
Because
that
I had
use
heard
to
that
go
had
away, but at
lapsed
some
because they
point-
hadn't done anything.
Now, at some point through an action, that could happen, but it's in nobody's interest right now to allow that to happen.
Oh, I think that's a great site.
And it's a complicated arrangement with the owner, and then it's leased to Rudd, and then Rudd has been looking at a subleaser, and not found anyone suitable, so, and then they went in and got the building half done, and are
Whatever.
needs more work, and so yeah, we're expecting good things, but then we've been disappointed a lot on hearing.
Well, maybe this development at the Napa Valley Grill site will spur them into doing something.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting then in the town.
Speaking of which, Vita, where are they?
Vita, that's another one, we're just around the corner, we're being next week, and haven't seen anything happen along those lines. We haven't given up on it, but we don't know what's going on, frankly.
There was a notice that you had posted of an ownership change. Does that mean Thomas Keller's out of it and somebody else is in it, or they restructured the Keller partnership?
Ownership change
The
of
ownership
Vita?
change was from Bistro Gentil from Philippe's group to Thomas Keller's group.
Oh, really?
That was the ABC posting.
Oh, that ABC sign up that's
Oh.
up there? And that's been up a while.
That
It's
was
been
from
up there
when-
forever,
That's
but
from
it-
when Philippe sold the property to him.
But it was, it was sitting up there when it was totally demolished and the site.
But it has
Yeah.
to sit up there per ABC
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
That's-
Oh, that's what it was
For those
about.
purposes,
I
yes.
got it.
for the transfer of license.
Yeah.
So let's see, it seemed like we were just talking about everything this morning.
So are we going to run into any problems if we end up with several properties on that end of town doing major construction? I mean, has the town considered that?
Yeah,
Because,
we
I mean, if
have.
we end up with Vita under construction, Washington Square under construction, and, I mean, I don't know what is ongoing with Gordon's, but that's going to end up pretty messy on that end of town.
Well, it's going to get messy anyway, because we're going to underground up there and put all the overhead underground. So we got to dig a big trench down the middle of
So I should
or
move? Is
down
that what
the
you're
side
saying?
of the
Okay.
road. So it's kind
South
of,
the town's much nicer.
there's various schools of thought on that, though, of just endure all the pain at once.
Do
and
it
then
all at
get
one
it over
time
with,
and get over
Or try to, some communities have pacing ordinances where you can only do a little bit of work each year, and then it gets stretched out over time, and in the interest of not disrupting everything. I think Vita, well, all of the work on Washington Square will kind of happen on that west side. And then Vita is going to be, they've got their back lot, and I think they can share a little bit of Luca. There was a cooperative thing going on there when Luca was being
Luca built and the stuff on their property. Yeah.
So we're hoping that, and really, what messes things up is grading, and there's not a lot of that to be done. Once they get the thing framed, they can work off the back of those lots, and it shouldn't be that bad. Well, I know there's a couple other, a farmhouse, we're going to go to the council with after they submit it, we've asked for a plan, we've gone and talked to them of what our expectations are. I don't know if anybody's been following that down at Yountville. And so we're all clear on what's getting torn down and what's not. And I know I'm forgetting something, and it's right on the back of my mind, but to tell you that I can't think of what it is.
Well, when you do, we can
Yeah, we'll
revisit.
see you next month.
Between now and September 14th.
I'll say that we all consent to adjourn.
I consent to it.
Thanks, Bob. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.